It's small, it's light, it's cheap, and it makes fantastic images. It is the ML 50mm f2. It's from Yashica, and this was a Tomioka made lens. Well, hey everybody, thank you for checking in once again and welcome to another episode. And I've got a great little compact lens to show you today. It's a beautiful little f2 lens from Yashica, and this is my favorite kind of lens. It's small, it's light, it's cheap, and it makes fantastic images. It is the ML 50mm f2. It's from Yashica, and this was a Tomioka made lens. Now, Tomioka is a name that has acquired cult status of recent years because of the quality of their lenses, so I'm hoping for good things from this one. Tomioka, I don't know if you know, but Tomioka actually was owned by Yashica. This is something that I've realised just recently, doing a little bit of research into the history of this lens. Tomioka was owned by Yashica, so all Yashica lenses are in fact Tomioka made, so this promises to be quite a nice one. Here is the lens off the camera, and you can see that it's a very small lens. It really is not a very long lens at all. In fact, it's not far off a pancake. That's at its fullest extension. We'll turn the focus ring back and we can see that becomes a really tiny little optic, very small and light. It has 6 aperture blades only, not necessarily a bad thing, but some prefer more. Some don't like the hexagon shape in bokeh bubbles in the background blur. Personally, I don't mind them. I actually rather like them. It reminds me of old movies of the 50s and 60s, all of which seem to use lenses with a 6-bladed aperture, or a great many of them anyway. You do often see them. You also see it in Breaking Bad. They used certainly for part of the production, seem to have used an aperture with lens rather with a 6-bladed aperture. So very much alive in the movie industry, 6-bladed apertures. So yeah, very small, very light. And one curious thing, these markings are not engraved. Now that is very strange in a lens that is supposed to be one, from the better line, the ML line of lenses, the better line of lenses. None of these digits or letters or any of the lettering is engraved. It's all painted on. That's very surprising. I've not encountered a lens from a major manufacturer that took this approach, but they did, and that's very curious. One thing that did occur to me was that Tomioka were making a lot of lenses for a lot of people at this time, so it could be that this is a lens that's been given the Yashica label that was a good lens, sure, but it could have been made in the same body for other manufacturers as well. Perhaps, this is what I'm wondering. I have seen a lot of lenses in this sort of form. It reminds me of Chinon, Cosina lenses. It's very similar to quite a few f2 50mm that you find from the early 80s. This is an early 80s lens. But anyway, there you go. Bayonet mount, contacts, Yashica mount, it's the same mount. Adapters are very readily available for this mount, so no problem fixing it to your mirrorless camera, whatever persuasion of camera you have. So how does this lens shoot? Well, pretty well actually. Let's look at background blur first. Well, background blur from this lens is actually it's pretty amazing. It's really energetic, not busy, not messy energetic, but nice energetic. It's very smooth, it's very soft, And it's got a hint of swirl, specular highlights, you know, bubbles from point light sources in the background. Well, in the center of the frame they're circular. I'm talking shooting wide open now. In the center of the frame they're circular, and at the edge of the frame they turn into ellipses, you know, cat's eye shapes, and they will run all around the outside of the shot, the edge of the shot, and they generate a feeling of motion, a feeling of swirl. This is actually one of the few lenses I found that do that. The Helios 44 is the best known one. This little Leica lens here, that swirls, that you can see in the back of the shot there. Quite a few of the CZJ lenses swirl. The Pankolar gives a bit of swirl, but this is a big surprise. I hadn't expected a Yashica lens to give any swirl at all. Whether the formula, the optical formula, is related to the Biotar formula that was the original swirler, that's the progenitor of the Helios 44, I don't know, but it does give some swirl, and that was very, very surprising. It's also, and this again was quite surprising, it's also nice and soft, and usually you find points where the blur will break up and become nervous, you know, as camera subject and background distances change, the relation between them changes. There may well be such a point on this lens, but I didn't find it while I was out shooting. I found it maintained a nice smooth background blur, and it's energetic, sure, it swirls, sure, but it controls that nicely, and it gives you very, very nice background blur. I actually rather like it. Sharpness, yes, sharpness is very good. Wide open, it is a very sharp lens. It's one of the sharper 50 f2s that I've used. I'd say it's just a hair sharper than lenses like the Jupiter 8 and the Helios 44. I don't think it's quite as sharp as the CZJ Pankolar. I think it's just a hair less sharp than that, and it sits in that middle ground for sharpness in such company as the, I don't know, the Canon the Canon 50mm f1.8, the Olympus 50mm f1.8. Lenses like that from most of the major manufacturers, I'd say this one fits right in. And sharpness, I'd say it's about the same as an Olympus, and that's a pretty good thing because Olympus generally are very sharp lenses, so I'd say it's somewhere in that region for sharpness. Not the very best, but certainly not the very worst, somewhere in the middle. Colour's lovely. It has a cool feel, and I do like a cool lens. I much prefer it to a lens that shoots a warmer image. This one shoots nice cool colours with plenty of pop, plenty of oomph, plenty of strength, plenty of depth. Colours really do pop from this one. Is it better for colour than other lenses? Well, it certainly has an individual approach. So there's certainly, not unique, but certainly very characterful, certainly very unusual sorts of colours. I would say they're close to the Zuiko colours, but I don't think they are. Zuiko colours are a bit restrained usually. I don't think they're similar to Canon colours. Canon colours really pop, but they're not of the same sort of temperature. So it's kind of out there on its own, this one, in a way. It's giving those cool colours with lots of pop and lots of depth. I really like them, and I thought this one was one of the nicer 50 f2s for colour representation that I've shot. Chromatic aberration, yep, it's got some, and I think it's probably, I haven't done detailed comparisons, but I think it's probably not quite as good as many of the offerings from many of the other major manufacturers on that score. You can see on a lot of images, you can see green fringing. It does seem to be greenish fringing, and that's borne out by the colour of the coatings here. You can just see that green sort of shade flashing in the light there, greeny blue colour. That's the colour that you see on the CA, and depending on the shot, you can see it right across the frame. It can be apparent even in the center of the frame. This is talking wide open. Does get slightly better as you stop down, but wide open it can be apparent in the center of the frame, and it's certainly apparent on the edges of the frame, but it does depend what you're shooting. It does have to be a thin structure like a branch or a wire or something against a lighter background like the sky or something like that. In general photography, day-to-day photography, you're really not going to see it. If you're photographing, I don't know, square grids of, I don't know, wire fence or something, or bare trees in winter against the sky, you may see a little bit if you really look. I mean, it's not really bad for it. You do have to look for it. I don't mind it. I don't mind a little bit of the purple stuff, a little bit of the green stuff. I know some photographers would run a mile, and if you're one of them, then this isn't the lens for you. But I don't think it's too much of a problem, but it is there. Right, what else we got? Vignetting. Right, vignetting. Yes, it does it a bit wide open, as we might expect, as pretty much all vintage lenses do wide open. You get some darker corners, and if you stop it down to, I stopped it down to, what did I stop it down to? F4 and also F8. It's pretty much gone by F4. It's fairly apparent at F2. Again, it depends what you're photographing. If you are photographing bare skies or bare sort of monocolored light walls, then yeah, you're going to see it. You're going to see that vignetting. In most photography, day-to-day photography, it's not going to be apparent and you're not going to see it, but in certain circumstances you will. Pretty much gone by F4, I would say. And it's, I don't know, it's debatable whether or not it's a good thing. Some photographers like it, some don't. Some shots suit it and others don't. If you're making, you know, technical images that need a very, very, you know, as sort of perfect a shot as possible, then you're going to need to stop the lens down and disappear that a little bit. All of these, you know, errors, optical errors. But if you're just doing day-to-day photography, none of them are going to show, and it's no worse or no better than most of the of its competitors. So I'd put this lens firmly towards the higher end of the middle of the 50mm f2s that you can buy, vintage 50mm f2s. I did say at the top of the show it is a cheap lens. You can buy this lens. I bought this lens for £30. There's one currently sitting on eBay for, what was it, £9 or £10. It's very, very cheap. I don't know if there's something wrong with that lens, but the point is it's a very cheap lens. You can buy this for 30 quid all day long. Don't pay much more than 40 quid for it. There are equivalent lenses of equivalent quality that you can buy for around that price. So I wouldn't pay too much for this lens, but at 30 or 40 pounds, it is a very solid performer and a very nice lens indeed, with some very unique characteristics and traits, like the background blur. That's very unique and characterful. Like the colours that it makes, those are very unique and characterful. So this lens has its own clear identity, which is after all what we want from a vintage lens. That's why we shoot these this old tech, because it gives that character, because it's quirky, because it's unusual. And this one certainly ticks all the boxes. So a great little lens for 30 or 40 quid. If you see a good one, you're looking for a good 50 f2, grab one. They're very, very nice. So I guess that's about it from me for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you liked it and you like the content of the channel, why not chuck us a sub? That would be very much appreciated. Many, many thanks go to subscribers for your support. That is very much appreciated. Thank you for that. And many, many thanks go to patrons for your support. That again is very much appreciated. Thank you very much indeed. For that, thanks to everybody who's given thanks, super thanks, who's commented, who's subscribed, who's engaged with the show in any way. If you think this old hippie's not doing too bad a job of keeping this old tech alive, you might want to become a patron of the channel yourself. You can do that over at www.tomioka.com. Patreon/Zenography, and you can do that for only $1 a month. So that's it from me for now. Many thanks for watching, and if you're not doing anything too troubling, difficult or awkward next week at around this time, please do join me for a spot more Zenography. Cheerio all.